In early 2018, I happened to drop by an estate sale the following Monday after it had concluded. I asked the owner if it was okay if I rummaged through the shop before the scrappers came through and hauled the remaining items to the scrapyard. He agreed, and I began rummaging through what was left. I came across all the taps and the dies that you saw me do an earlier video on, and I also came across this shear on the floor amongst a few other items that had been passed over. It was seized up, frozen, and rusty throughout, but I was sort of intrigued. I expressed interest in it, and the owner kind of chuckled, probably assuming that it was going to end up in my scrap barrel as well. But I made him an offer of scrap price. He accepted, and I loaded it up. Once the shear had made its way home, it found a spot in the corner of my shop with a can of PB Blaster nearby. Every time that I walked past it or stepped over it, it got a little rinse down. And that brings us to present day. Now, I spent a fair bit of time online trying to research Barth. I did come across a few identical shears for sale, but I came across very little information speaking to the history of Barth. There was one short brochure that stated that Barth Engineering and Manufacturing Company was founded somewheres around the turn of the 20th century in Milldale, Connecticut, United States. It shows that they specialized in metalworking tools, and it also states that they were a successor to Ellis Manufacturing Company. See, those threads are wet, so that PV blaster that I've been putting in for the last year has definitely worked its way in there. Okay, that released this on the other side. See that rust scale. I've been kind of contemplating what to do for a base for this machine to rest on. There's a little maker's mark there, but unfortunately it's too damaged to see. It's some type of diamond, and I don't know what it says in the middle there. And you can see how bad the pitting was on this piece. Got it somewhat cleaned up over here. Well, I inquired with a friend of mine who is a diesel mechanic. I asked whether he'd worked on any crankshafts lately. He said it just so happens that a few months ago he had. and the damaged crank was still on a pallet waiting to go to the scrapyard. After checking with the appropriate people, he was able to retrieve the crank for me. Kind of ironic, 2 items here saved from the scrapyard, the shear and the crank. I guess it's also kind of ironic that I was able to have the crank because it's sheared. He explained to me that this crank sheared in 2 and was most likely related to some type of manufacturer defect. They ended up having to warranty a whole bunch of the parts, and once this crank had been verified as faulty from the manufacturer, it was scheduled to go to the scrapyard. Okay, I have here a master link. I ended up with a whole bunch of these in a scrap run. It's like a whole 1 gallon bucket of these, and I kept them because they are really useful as tabs for welding onto different projects. And then I also just cut this, and this is going to go up under here. I just checked the forecast, and it looks like the next couple of days we've got weather predicted. This is the only good day of weather this week. And so I wanted to get this shear painted. This is some rusty metal primer. And all I'm going to do is just prime the bottom of this base and the bottom of the shear where you'll never see them. Because like I said, they're just way too heavy for suspension. I can't suspend them from any type of rack that I have here today. So I'm going to unfortunately have to paint them resting on their bases. Now these lands here are where the actual blade ride in, and I don't want paint on those. I think it's just going to gum up the movement of this machine. They'll get a coating of oil or grease on them, and so I'm going to mask them now. Okay, and our mix today is going to be 4-3-1. 4 parts paint, 3 parts reducer, 1 part catalyst. Called Japan Dryer, which is perfect for wintertime spraying. It's an accelerator, it speeds up dry time, and you can use it in oil-based paints, which is exactly what Rust-Oleum is. I just sprayed that final coat on and quick ran to a job for 1 hour. And when I left, it wasn't raining. It was threatening, but it wasn't raining yet. I was gone for 1 hour and it started coming down, but check it out. We put that Japan dryer in there, and it's still a little bit tacky. I mean, there's no way that I would try to handle this and install it, but look at that. Japan dryer. That's another option for you guys. Especially this time of year. I mean, I knew the rain was coming. It wasn't supposed to come until tomorrow, but surprise, surprise, here it is. And it looks like we'll be okay. Now, you might notice that this is green, and I said I was going to paint it black. I am going to paint it black, but I wanted to overmix my green to be sure that the shear had enough, since it is a custom color. I plan on coming back and top coating this with black, but since I had the extra paint, the overmixed paint, I needed to use it, so it got sprayed on here as a base coat. Yeah, we're going to be spraying a little bit of black now for the base, for the big crankshaft. This is just a satin black. I prefer to use a satin here in the shop to a gloss. Just a personal preference. Get this agitated. It's in pretty good shape, but there's a little bit of pigment settled out of the bottom. We'll re-agitate this. We're going to thin it. We've been having these afternoon rain showers come through, and right now we've got a little break in the weather. So we're going to quick shoot it. We're going to throw a little bit of Japan dryer in there, and that's going to really set it off fast. Tiny bit of catalyst, tiny bit of reducer, and a very tiny amount of Japan dryer. A little bit goes a long way with this stuff. Ooh, that's borderline too much there.
I'm really dissatisfied with the way the paint came out on this piece, and I think I'm going to go ahead and spray it black.
I mentioned to you I put in that Japan dryer, which really sets this paint off. I'll add a dose rate, the proper dose rate, in the description. But you can see 15 minutes later, and this stuff is tacked off already. It's flashed. It's almost ready for another coat, which is ideal, because if you look at the horizon over here, you can see it's going to start raining here before too long. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get the second coat on here. There's still a couple of parts that need a little bit better coverage, just to cover up that green right in here in the rings. And I need to flip this over and paint the front side. So let's get to it.
That's all she wrote.
very, very small holes around the tip, and that's actually what atomizes your paint. Those need to be clear. It's crucial. Now, the best thing that I found, because you don't want to really mess these up, the best thing I found is just to use a small piece of wire. Ready for next time. Japan dryer. I bought that right off the shelf at the hardware store. And today it was a lifesaver. Otherwise there was no way we would have painted. I literally just finished cleaning the gun, and here comes the weather. I think we're all right. Alright, so I'm going to get ready to assemble this thing, but just for a rust preventative measure, I'm going to be using some of this min wax, paste finishing wax, and I'm going to rub it on all these raw metal areas, and I'm not going to be relying on it as my primary source of lubrication. All that it is just a rust preventative. There's going to be grease in here. That's going to be doing the lubricating. This is that lower blade that had the really bad pitting on the back, and this bolt right here was seized up really badly, and the other one is broken off in there from the previous owner. And I debated on whether to cut this off and drill both these out and retap them, and ultimately what I decided to do was leave them there, and I will reinstall this as it was. And anytime that I need to adjust this, I think I'm just going to rely on a shim stock. I didn't want this to end up growing into something bigger, so I figured I would cut my losses and run. But these blades, they are staying raw metal, so I do want to make sure that I halt that rust. Alright, I've got an extreme duty grease there, and I got my never seize. I can't get the cap off. There it goes. Well, those are what the old hardware looked like, and I was able to find new black hardware at my local egg supply. Those are grade 8 blacks, except for 2. I don't want to do too much grease on here. I don't want it to be so messy that it's getting on my parts and that it's migrating out of the machine. Okay, so all through this build, you guys saw me struggling with this thing, and my wife helped me take it down off the sawhorses yesterday and was appalled at how heavy it was. So I thought, just for the sake of knowing, that I would throw it on my scale here. So if anybody has any guesses as to what the weight of these pieces are, go ahead and leave them down below. Alright, 1/4 of a degree out of level. I'll call that acceptable. It's getting mounted to the column right here. There's another one right here, and it's getting bolted down to the concrete here and here. You have conduit inside of this post that's running the power to it. Alright, I went and rummaged through the scrap pile, and I've got some 1/4 inch by 4 inch plates, and I've got some 1/8 inch by 1 inch flat bar. Looks like it's only got about a 4 inch throat.
264 pounds.
190 pounds on that.